Well, nurse, I have
I just want a little bump on the back of my head.
Haven't seen hide nor hair of either one of you. We're
I actually, this is the first time I left the third floor today.
I'm thinking that.
I did.
Thought so.
I didn't,
How do you
Are we ready?
Yeah,
Not that you're
no, but I like literally, I have not.
So it is 5:30,
Broke his hand, yeah.
and we're going to get started. Okay? Okay. So we will call to order the meeting of Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners for Wednesday, February 15th, 2017, and we will stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Bonnie.
Lathrop,
I'm here.
Mayor,
Here.
Orfolet. Here. Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus,
Here.
Johnson,
Present.
Crawford.
Here. So we have approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of January 28th, 2017. That was our strategic planning. And the minutes of February 1st, which was a regular meeting. Minutes of February 8th, which was last week's study sessions. Anybody? Yes.
The minutes of February 8th, I was curious why the minutes did not reflect that we had made a choice of the choices that were given to us as far as a direction for administration to move forward. I thought that the minutes should reflect that
Okay.
and would ask that that be included in the minutes. I think it was option number 4.
I thought it was option number 2.
No, I believe it was...
I think it was number 2.
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but it was the option where we were
Well,
going...
no. And
No.
I didn't know you all agreed to number 2. Because they don't make any motions or anything in study session, I don't usually put that you made a decision. I've done that before, and they said no.
I didn't say we made a decision. We were asked whether or not we would give direction to the board on how, or to the administration on how to proceed, and I said I would recommend that we go forward with, and I believe it was the 4th option, which was to provide resources to the COA option. Was that not option number?
It was the second option.
It was the second option.
But we took
Okay.
it as direction by the county board through consensus of the board. So that was how, that's
Can
a way
we
to
have it
reflect
stated in the minutes? that
Absolutely.
By consensus of the county board?
And I just want
Were
to...
you all in consent that that was the
Yeah.
Well,
correct
I'd like
option?
to see what they were, because I don't want to be in consensus on something that is being...
I don't have that in front of me today.
Nor do
Let me see if I can pull it up, and
That would
I'll
be fine.
report.
Or
I can try to get it up on my
we can
laptop,
approve
okay?
those minutes next time?
Let's approve everything except the January 8th minutes, and
Right.
then we'll deal with those.
That's fine.
February
We can approve those minutes next time with the
February.
changes.
Or
And
later
so
today.
do I have a motion to approve January 28th and February 1st?
So moved. Second.
So moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Mayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so those 2 sets of minutes are approved, and we'll put the other ones on for the next meeting.
Well, I won't be here for the next meeting, which is...
I'll try to get them up before the end of the meeting.
Okay, that'd be helpful.
We can
Thank
approve
you.
them later, that's fine. So now we come to first public comment. Bonnie, would you read the rules, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Okay, so does anybody, yes, sir, come right up.
Bonnie, are you ready? My name is Dr. Gerald Dobeck. I live at 18307 Mission Road, Traverse City, Michigan, 49686. I'm a resident of Grand Traverse County. I'm also currently the president of the Grand Traverse Astronomical Society. The commissioners are looking to maybe liquidate some property, and my concern is the 37.5 acres at the corner, southeast corner of Burnley and Keystone Road. In looking to sell that property for whatever use, I ask that you please take into consideration the Rogers Observatory, which is directly east of that parcel. It's a great community asset, and it would be very detrimental if something could prohibit the observatory from continuing its use for astronomy education and community service. Light pollution becomes a big problem, as well as dust and noise and traffic throughout that area. And the observatory has been a great asset, I believe, to the community for well over 35 years, with the Astronomical Society conducting open houses, about 20 to 25 open houses per year, as well as the college courses that are taught there. So in looking forward to that sale, I ask that you take into consideration the use of that property, the 37.5 acres, and how it will affect the observatory now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Anybody else? What? Yes, ma'am.
Geraldine Green, 214 East 11th Street, a member of Grand Traverse County and a county taxpayer. I know you're going to talk in a while about whether you're going to rescind the election results for the Commission on Aging from last November. And I've been trying to observe, video some stuff. And one of the things that I noticed was that if they come and do an assessment, that there is a note, there may be a waiting list on any of our services. So there may be way too much money for the County Commission on Aging, but I think we need to do more, not less. And also, I guess it was the acting director. I won't ask why she was fired, but I can read the Record Eagle and assume that was because she spoke. Maybe it was more than that. But I'm going to ask the county board to consider new people who are your two top administrators. Maybe it's time to replace them, not only because of what's going on with the County Board of Commissioners, but what goes on with every department and employee right now in Grand Traverse County. It's time to stop this BS. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Once, twice. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you very much. To approval of the agenda, do any board members have anything to add, subtract from the agenda? Anybody have anything?
Move we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have an agenda. Now we move on to the consent calendar. Would you read that for us, please, Bonnie?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Bay County Resolution regarding revision to Medicare prescription drug bill of 2003. Number 2, minutes of Northwest Regional Airport Commission, December 20th. Number 3, minutes of Department of Health and Human Services Board, December 23rd. Number 4, Road Commission monthly report. Number 5, Grand Traverse Conservation District monthly report. B, approvals. Number 1, 2017 hauler licenses. Number 2, board rules, update to section 7.2. Number 3, fiscal year 2017 budget amendments. Number 4, January 2017 claims approval.
Okay, does anybody on the board want anything removed from the consent calendar for discussion? Cheryl?
Approvals, 1.
So the hauler licenses? Sonny?
Can we just pull the claims approval for a minute? I just want to speak about that a little bit,
Okay, so B4.
please. Thank you.
Anybody from the audience like anything pulled from the consent calendar for discussion? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
A motion to approve the consent calendar, yes.
With the removal of those two?
Yes.
Okay,
1 and 4
Okay.
from approvals.
okay. Do I have support?
Support.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Mayer, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have no special orders of business, so we move on to items removed from the consent calendar. Cheryl, number B1.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from our council on where we're at with that process that we talked about when this came up the last time.
Yeah, so where we're at with the process is that we are working with, we will be working with the county's resource recovery contractor, Iris Waste. They will, which may require an amendment to our current existing contract with them. But in any event, they'll be given the task of working with staff to develop an amendment to the solid waste management plan. And then once that is completed, then the solid waste committee will be formed to review that document and will also require further board action. So we have got the wheels in motion, so to speak, to begin the process of amending the solid waste management plan.
And what's the timeline on that process?
I don't have a timeline for you. I don't.
Well,
I'm going to request a timeline.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to hear a year from now that we're still in the process. I'd like to hear that we're done, so.
Well, I would assume that Iris is going to draft on our behalf an amendment. The amendment process itself is complicated because it involves the appointment, I believe it's a 15-member citizen committee made up of industry representatives, governmental entities. I've sat on that committee twice through the last 2 changes. It's a pretty complicated process. And then you have to hold a public hearing, and then there's like I think there's a 60-day public comment period that people are allowed to come in and make comment. And then after that, the committee approves the amendment, and then that amendment has to be taken out to each of the townships and villages and cities to be passed, and then it has to come back to the county board to pass. So, the last time we handled the public input process in as far as the getting it approved by all the governmental entities in a matter of about 36 days, which my understanding at the time was that was a state record. So, it's going to be at least 3 to 4 months to get through this process. Even if they do all the work on our behalf, it's still going to take us at least 90 days to get there.
And I don't have a problem with 90 days. I don't have a problem with 180 days. What I'm asking for is a timeline. The only way we can stay on top of things and see if the requests we're making are done is if we have a timeline and then we periodically get reports. So that's all I'm asking for. I'm not trying to give you an onerous, short timeline. I just want a timeline. Okay.
Fair enough? Okay. Any other discussion on that one? Okay. Sunny, the claims approval?
We should have a motion to approve the hauler licenses.
You want to do them separately? Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the hauler licenses.
I would move to approve the hauler licenses as outlined.
Okay.
Support.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to the claims approval.
All right,
Sunny.
When we had the discussion about eliminating the statutory audit committee, we talked about the claims coming before the full board. Somehow or another, when I get one page, it says claims and accounts, actuarials, and, you know, less than a full page for $4.23 million. I need a little more explanation of what we're spending $4 million for about that.
We're working on that.
Yeah, so absolutely understood. I'll respond to two things, if I may.
Okay. Yep.
Chairwoman Crawford.
Please.
So I do have the PDF copy of all of the claims that were run in the month of January. However, because of the timing of when the policy was changed and the process of entering our actual claims, there's no way in our current system for us to separate out those claims that either do not need board approval, for instance, those biweekly tax distributions, or those that would come through the courts, from those that do need board approval. And the nature of some of the information that's transmitted from the courts would then call into question the privacy of either the individuals for which we have to remit things. So we're working on that. I'm happy to make that full check register available to you. I spoke with legal counsel. He was kind enough to step out of a conference to take my call to answer that question in advance of a full policy being presented to the board for approval. I have drafted one, but am again working through some procedural issues.
Well, just somewhere between the fact that 3 commissioners sit down and physically go through every invoice and a, quarter-page printout, I'd like to be somewhere in between here. I'd like to know where we're spending $4 million.
Okay. Anybody else?
Madam Chairman, I will move to approve the claims.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. So I have a motion by Commissioner Wheelock, second by Commissioner Lathrop. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam Chair, I think...
Yes, ma'am.
The clerk has found...
I do have the answer for Commissioner Follett.
Okay, we'll go on with that.
Options for COA. Number 1, maintain or return to status quo, no change to operations. Number 2, maintain status quo for now with internal improvements. Number 3, authority independent entity. Number 4, the management services agreement.
So it's number 2.
I think it was number 2. Okay, so
So I will add number 2 into the minutes. Do you want to approve them then?
Yep. So do I have a motion?
moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
So moved by Commissioner
That's
Gorfulet.
the February 8th.
February 8th.
February 8th.
And seconded by Commissioner Mayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So those minutes of February 8th are approved.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Departmental items. We have the County Treasurer, Building Authority, refunding of bonds for the pavilions, starring Heidi.
Heidi Sheppy, the County Treasurer. Here, on behalf of the pavilions, Corey is in the audience along with Bond Counsel John Axe. They are looking to refund their current bonds that they have. It's going to generate at a minimum $270,000 savings to the pavilions. And we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions for Heidi on the bond? Is it retiring the bonds?
Refunding.
Refunding the bonds.
Just refunding so they get a lower rate.
Okay.
John, is there any reason to think this isn't the right move for us to make here? John Axe has been our bond counsel for a lot longer than I've sat here, so...
I think I started about 1973, roughly. Anyway, no, this is like refinancing your house. We have savings, they're callable, and we definitely recommend that you proceed ahead. You're going to save a fair amount of money here.
Could I ask what the costs are associated with the refund?
Well, the estimated costs are included, the costs of issuance are $35,000, and there are other costs, like there's an underwriter's discount and things. We don't know exactly how much they'll bid. Those are all calculated before we determine the savings. So that savings that are estimated are net savings. And Meredith, when she does these, is pretty conservative. We usually do a fair amount better.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Madam Chairman, I would move to authorize the refunding of the Pavilion's 2007 bonds as outlined by bond counsel and the treasurer.
Support.
Second that.
Okay, motion.
Roll call.
We will. Motion by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Gore Follett. Any further discussion?
Rita got there.
Okay, Bonnie, roll call vote, please.
Mayor?
Yes.
Gore Follett?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. We have emergency management. Promulgation document for the Grand Traverse County Emergency Operations Plan, and Greg is going to come and explain exactly what that is. Please.
He's going to teach us how to pronounce it first.
I pronounced it right. Promulgation?
Very good. You've done
Okay.
your homework. Good evening. Greg Bird, Emergency Management Coordinator for Grand Traverse County. This first item is basically a housekeeping item. Michigan Public Act 390 is the emergency management law for the state of Michigan. And basically, every local jurisdiction responsible for emergency management and or the emergency operations plan is the chief elected official or the county executive. So anytime, of course, that chief elected official changes, we basically just have to have a new promulgation document signed by the chief elected official. They have to know what they're signing for and that they're responsible for the emergency operations plan. If this county did not have an appointed emergency management coordinator, then ultimately the chief elected official would fill that role by default. So after Ms. Crawford was appointed chair, she was given a copy of the emergency operations plan, which is current and approved by FEMA and the State of Michigan Emergency Management Homeland Security Division. So again, this is just a housekeeping issue. It has to be on file as the cover page for our emergency operations plan, and it has to be sent forward to the Emergency Management Homeland Security Division of the state. More into PA 390 will be for a local officials course, the beginning part of April, which you'll all be invited to, be about a 2-hour orientation for
Gosh,
your...
that sounds fun.
It is. We'll make it fun. It's your roles and responsibilities of keeping the public safe. So,
Which is stay out of the way. Sometimes.
know what you're responsible for.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, again, my signature is already there. I did date it today's date, so hopefully there's no issue with getting that updated and signed. Actually, it's the law. You kind of have to.
So move.
Okay.
Second.
So moved by Commissioner Gore Follett, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? Any questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess it's me.
All right.
Okay.
The second item I have has been in a progress work for about 2 years. This is a mutual aid agreement dating back to right before I came here and got hired here. We had the very bad snowstorm in March of 2012, and there was some people were without power for 2 weeks. Then August of 2015, we had the severe windstorm, and that got us talking with the EOC activation that if we ever went underneath a long-term power outage, our public safety vehicles wouldn't have any place to fuel. Unless we worried about bringing generators in, and all of our public safety vehicles, with the exception of county roads and City of Traverse City, they have we use commercial fuel depots, so private sector. After the 2012 snowstorm, with using a multitude of funding, county roads put in automatic 24-hour generators and digital punch card key code systems at both their fuel depots, the one at Lafrenia Road and the one in Kingsley. So we got to talking with that. It would be a fairly simple process for them to take all of our county public safety agencies, issue them pins. I would be the keeper of the pin, and in the event that we had an emergency situation, that we could issue pins to those agencies and they could get fuel. So this mutual aid with county roads not being under the auspices of the county commission, this mutual aid agreement would basically be entered into our emergency operations plan as a contingency. We don't have any intentions of issuing those pins unless we are under a declaration. And of course, at that period of time, the chief elected official and county administration will be in on those talks. But this just basically sets us up for a contingency plan that if our standard fuel sources aren't available, that we have a place to get emergency fuel. And as someone who worked during one of the worst disasters in this country in the state of Mississippi during Katrina, I can tell you it was bad enough with a fuel shortage for the citizens, but when the public safety vehicles started running out of fuel, it was very bad. So this is something that we don't consider we ever have an issue with long-term power outages, but we could, especially with the threats of ice storms and the other hazards associated here. So this is the first step to get us an emergency fuel depot. The second step is to begin working with our private sector sources and seeing if we can enter an agreement that they will guarantee getting emergency generators, portable generators, so that we have a in essence, a double redundancy backup for our public safety providers if we need fuel in an emergency. This has gone through Mr. Forsyth, and it has gone through the County Roads Commission legal. We've gone back and forth. We've scrubbed it. It's a fairly simplistic document, so we're just asking for your support to have this in place.
Okay. Sonny?
Madam Chairman, I would move to sign the emergency mutual agreement between Grand Traverse County and the Grand Traverse Road Commission in the event of an emergency need for fuel services.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody?
For many years, local fire trucks have used PIN numbers at different stations around. You know, when Lawson Oil was out on M72, Long Lakes Fire Department filled fuel there 24 hours a day with put in the key card, punch in the PIN number, and filled fuel. So it's certainly a doable thing. You know, that's how that whole fuel man system works. You know, private industry has cards they put in, punch in a key number. It identifies who got the fuel, or at least what vehicle the fuel went in. So it's a good method.
And in that kind of situation, we're going to be tracking expenses for disaster reimbursements, and their system gives us an easy printout, time, date, and it'll be done by a public safety agency. So we're easily able to have records for reimbursement purposes. So it's a win-win, I think, for everybody.
Beats taking gas out there in a can.
Well, and somebody told me, I think it was the Sheriff's Department, that during the snowstorm of 2012, they were hand pumping gasoline in some of their vehicles. So we have the mechanism in the county to not have to do that. So we might as well have the agreement in place that if we need to, we can do that.
Yes, Cheryl.
I would just make the comment that number 8 of the emergency mutual aid agreement is a pretty standard disclaimer clause. However, I would just encourage the administration to make note of it, because it clearly states that Grand Traverse County is acknowledging that if it chooses to use this fuel, if there's anything wrong with the fuel, we're the ones responsible for the damaged vehicles, not the road commission. So it does put a responsibility on Grand Traverse County, and I just think it's important to know that it's a wonderful partnership and it's a great offer, but it doesn't come without responsibility. So, Chris, number 8 of this proposed agreement for emergency.
Primarily make sure you put gas in gas vehicles and diesel fuel in
Well,
diesel
exactly,
vehicles, because that's where it happens.
Sure, primarily that's the case, but it very clearly says that Grand Traverse County acknowledges it has inspected or will inspect all of the material and is satisfied with its condition, fitness for use, location, and status.
Yeah, let me be candid. I wasn't happy with that. I wasn't happy with the first draft of this agreement. The first draft we saw had a lot more, no offense, Carrie, but onerous language. in it, and to the point where I said to Greg, I don't want you to sign this. I don't. And I redlined it, and I sent it back. So I don't like this language. I don't. Okay, I don't think Greg likes it, but you know, that's what they want.
Okay, and I'm, you know, unfortunately, I'm a lawyer, so I catch, you know, I read this stuff, and I don't like that language either, but I can live with it as long as, again, the county realizes it has a responsibility in the event that we have to do this.
Right.
Dan?
Just for clarity, does that mean we're responsible just for our vehicles, or if there's bad fuel, we're responsible for theirs too? Just ours.
Ours. So our sheriff's
No, it's just
vehicles?
ours, but
Yeah.
that could be pretty bad.
That could be, yeah.
That could be real bad.
And, you know, this was a sticking point that Chris and I went back and forth with Carrie and Mr. Cook, and we have a great relationship with them. But this was a non-negotiable for them from not only their legal advisor, but also their insurance carrier. Because I think they're under the same auspice of their guys of training. So, you know, if it takes a minute, you know, we hope to assume that all of our operators know the difference between gas and diesel. And I happen to have seen the fuel depots, and they're very well marked. But in that event that it happens, if we have to give further direction to protect, we know knowingly County Roads is not going to bring in bad gas or bad fuel because they rely on it maybe more so than we do. But this was a non-negotiable for this plan or this agreement to come forward. If I had it my way, we'd simply work with them with an agreement, and it would be a half-a-page entry into our emergency operations plan under emergency support function number 1, transportation, just as an agreement. But the complication here is that the road commission is a separate entity. So, but I agree too.
I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't enter into the agreement. I just want the record to reflect that there is an obligation on Grand Traverse County, and that in the event that there's an emergency, we need to be proactive in doing our due diligence. You know, amongst all the other things that you need to do during an emergency, you need to go over and check the fuel depot. So add that to the punch list.
Right. I think some of that can simply be taken care of by having the Road Commission notify emergency management each time they renew their contract with their supplier that's providing fuel to them. That at least gives us the opportunity to verify that they are getting fuel from a reputable supplier. And they sign that contract, I think, annually, I believe, but I'm not positive.
Or if we know it's going to lead to the possibility of using their depot, that we get their assurity on that particular batch at the time. And, you know, if we do have something go wrong with the vehicle and we're under that declaration, each disaster is so different, and the different components of state disaster and federal disaster, that's a total myriad. If anybody wants some great reading material for just before bedtime, the Stafford Act is, but if we were to lose a vehicle to something strange like that, we would be able to put that in as a reimbursable expense or a deductible expense under the Stafford Act, if we qualified for the Stafford Act. So, I mean...
well, I'm not trying to belabor the point.
I agree with you.
It's a small legal thing, but, you know, that's what we lawyers are paid to do.
Chris is back in the room, thank you, because your help with this was invaluable, and I know it's taken so long, but I do appreciate your insight in this, and Carrie's too, so.
Anybody else? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We move on to the Sheriff's Office. We have licensing and regulatory affairs grant acceptance for a medical marijuana operations and oversight grant for law enforcement. Captain
Good morning.
Fulis. Hi.
Randy Fulis, I'm the detective captain with the Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office. Before you today to ask for approval for a grant from LARA. It's the Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Bureau of the state of Michigan. They have been, over the past several years, collecting fees from medical marijuana card holders, from caregivers, dispensaries, things of the like. They're now pushing that money back to the 83 Michigan counties to help offset some of our costs that we're incurring to enforce these state laws. So that's what this grant is. It's identical to the one that I brought before the board last year in 2016. we were able to recoup about $23,000, if I remember correctly, last year in wages, benefits, equipment that we were used, and it's a no matching grant. It's 100% reimbursable for any wages and benefits and equipment that we have listed under the grant, which I wrote. So again, in respect to the board and public's time, I believe you guys have copies of the grant in your packets. If there are questions that I can answer for you, I'd be happy to. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward grant, again, 100% reimbursable, and that will help us offset our expenses from primarily our 2 detectives that are in the Traverse Narcotics team. They're doing most of the medical marijuana law enforcement, so to help us offset some of those costs coming back. So, yes, sir.
Sonny?
Madam Chairman, I would move to accept the grant in the amount of $34,813 in regard to a medical marijuana grant.
Support.
Okay, so moved by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Johnson, and I think Tom had his hand up. Let's go with Tom.
How is Grand Traverse County doing with compliance among the dispensaries and the growers?
I talked to, actually before the meeting today, I talked to one of our detectives who was in the Traverse Narcotics team just to kind of get a feel for the way things are going. I know that they are expecting to be spending more time this next year than they did last year. There's a lot of new laws coming, some that went into effect last December. A lot of them are coming into effect this next December too, and there's going to be several trainings that I'm going to have to go to. We went to one the end of December or November. Chris Forsyth was there too, and there's a lot to it. So we anticipate that as far as compliance goes, I think they're holding their own with that in our county. It's just with all these changes coming, really not sure what to expect in the future.
I just want to ask one more thing.
Sure.
Does it change at all in the summer when a lot of tourists come to town as to how that business is operating? Or more problems or no fewer?
Not that I'm aware of. No significant difference.
Dan?
I know that a few zoning administrators at township level struggle with the marijuana laws. Are you going to provide any training for those people in the townships?
With the townships, and I'll let Chris jump in here if I misquote or something, but my understanding is that come this December, caregivers, dispensaries are going to have to apply with townships, municipalities in order to operate. They'll have to pay those townships and or municipalities to operate. So there's going to be more control, I think, on the local level. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the townships townships, cities, villages, they get to opt in. In other words, they get to allow if they're going to have dispensaries in the community, or they could explicitly opt out as well.
Okay, all right.
If they choose, yeah.
Thank you.
Bob?
Yeah, is this going to actually help increase more enforcement, or is it just going to recoup costs that you're going to have anyway, I guess?
Yeah, I think the best way to put that is just basically to recoup the costs that we're going to be putting in anyway.
Sonny?
Randy, this grant specifically talks about the inspection, if you will, of those dispensaries and the growing operations, correct? This doesn't address anything as far as, I know we get into discussions regularly about the fact that, we have no way of testing whether a person's under the influence of marijuana when they're driving a vehicle, and, I know in my business I have issues with, I have post-injury drug testing, and the guy gets a couple stitches and flunks the drug test because he's got a medical marijuana card. So now where are you at?
So, I'm sorry, your question?
My question is, do we have any abilities yet to test how much the individual is under the influence of marijuana if they're driving or impaired?
Basically, the way our road deputies are operating now is if they make a traffic stop and they smell marijuana, or by the way the person's acting, they believe that they may be under the influence of marijuana or another drug, they'll do the basic field sobriety tests, ask questions. If there's probable cause that the person may be under the influence of marijuana, we'll take that person into custody, get a search warrant, and draw blood. And then essentially the way it is now is that they have to have those metabolites in their blood at the time that they're driving. And then basically we wait for the blood results to come back to provide to the prosecutor to take the enforcement action on that.
Basically, we're treating it similar to the way we're handling alcohol.
Yeah, correct. Short of having, like with alcohol, obviously we have the PBT, which is very helpful. With that, it's just a little more difficult for the officers.
Dan?
Is there, I know with alcohol, there's a legal limit. You can have some alcohol in your system and you're not breaking the law. What about marijuana?
Well, working in the Detective Bureau, I can honestly tell you I haven't made an OUID arrest in several years. However, Chris, could you?
Yeah, it's any presence. Yeah. So it's typically tested for nanograms. See how many nanograms of THC do you have in your system.
Wow. So if you have a person that has a medical reason to take marijuana and he's taking it legally, he's always driving illegally then, right?
Yeah, you know, there is that conflict between the medical marijuana law and operating, but operating says that law says if you're operating with the presence of any controlled substance, you're violating the law.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. We move on to finance. I believe Jody has an update for us.
Thank you, Chairwoman Crawford. I won't move to the podium if that's okay. I'll follow the suit of last month as well. So included in your packet is the monthly departmental report for your review and consideration. Chairwoman Crawford has continued to request that we place that under departmental items to allow for any discussion that the board may have as opposed to under receive and file. I've included again a transmittal memo for your review and consideration. It does discuss that these are unaudited numbers through December 31st. We continue to close the books. I've highlighted a few items that have caused a deviation from the original appropriation or projected budget. Those major items are noted, as well as to draw your attention to the fact that, for instance, the fourth quarter appropriations to other funds have not yet been posted. Those will happen when we're closer to finalizing the books so that we know a better amount to post within that initial appropriation.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Jody?
So our revenues are about 98% what we budgeted, and so far our expenditures are about 90% of what we
Correct.
budgeted.
I didn't actually open the report.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Which means we'll send money
Okay.
back.
Thank you, Jody. Under old unfinished business, we have, I believe in your packet was a strategic plan document. I think Ms. DeHaan had sent that to us earlier to see if there was any comments or changes or anything that anybody didn't, I'm trying to get to it, that anybody felt didn't represent what we spoke about at the strategic planning meeting. And we wanted that to be able to get out to the public at this point in this form. Anybody have any comments about that, or is it?
Just clarification under the specific county initiatives. The first one is titled Continue the Reorganization and Redesign of an Internal County HR Department. I'm not sure what that means. I think what we talked about was wanting restoration of a fully staffed and fully functioning HR department. So I'm not sure if those words
Is that just another way of putting it, or?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think that's just another way of putting it.
You use a lot of words to say that.
You'd think they were lawyers, wouldn't you?
Bob, every meeting you do that.
I get it.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I mean, do we have an external county HR department? I mean,
No.
yeah, so I don't know what internal means, so it's just kind of confusing to have that word in there.
Dedicated
And
county HR
reorganization and
department?
redesign, I mean, you know, I thought we talked about the fact that we wanted, as a board, to see the HR department restored to its prior fully functioning, fully staffed position. And I know that the administration has put forward, you know, several different ideas of ways that they think that would look, but I thought that the board had put forward how we thought that would look, and that it would look like what it used to look like, an HR director, you know, some people who are, you know, in there all the time doing the work. We'd, you know, maybe not continue to outsource some of the stuff. I mean, I don't know. I'm concerned because this is something that doesn't say to me what I thought we said we were going to do. So I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe others think it does say what we said we wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
I don't have a whole lot, I mean, I know what you're saying, but I think also, I don't know where we said go back to how it was originally. Also, I think we do want to get it going again, get a director and get some other people in there, but I don't see any problem with looking at the design of it or whatever with it, you know. I think the internal part, I can see that because we did have talk about outsourcing. Yes, so I think that may.
That's what that means.
To me, that's what that would say is we've kind of agreed that we're going to have as much as we can internally.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I'd rather just didn't even say reorganize and redesign, that we're just going to have a traditional HR department led by our own HR director. So.
What do you think?
I got a question.
Yes, Dan, add to that.
Why does it have to be traditional?
Yeah, we don't have to have the
Why
word
does it have to be like it was in the past?
Yeah.
I think we got to leave it open to have our staff give us choices. We might have something better than it was in the past.
I think that because it became a department that was not fully staffed, it's an opportunity to think about how it could be better and how it could be done differently in a better way. So I think that's probably what we were looking for. I like continued reorganization and redesign. I think that kind of says it. Sonny?
I guess when I read this, I don't necessarily have a problem with the reorganization, redesign, as long as we have denoted the fact that this is an internal function of the county. This is not something that we're going to contract out. This is going to be an internal function of the Grand Traverse County.
Amen.
And that is there.
And that is here. You know, when I first read the reorganization and redesigned, I rattled around in my head some of the different ways that different suggestions have been made how we could do it differently. Some of those suggestions I didn't support then, and I still wouldn't support. But the idea that we have committed that this is going to be an internal function of the Grand Traverse County, that I'm willing to accept.
I think that's what we made abundantly clear. Yes.
Yeah, you know, the wording might not be the way I would have written it, but as long as we are all committed to the fact that the HR function will be an internal function of Grand Traverse County.
Okay. Anybody else?
My last word is I think we should revisit this and not make too long of an explanation in the strategic priorities, because it needs to be broken down into more of an outline. We need to have an HR director.
Right.
We need to drop the consultant that we have right now. We need to move on that. We need to change, and we need to change for the better. If an employee has a grievance, I don't even understand exactly what the process is. Normally, where I've worked before, I would go to my supervisor, and I would go to an ombudsman, or I would go to the HR department. And I'm not sure exactly what we expect of our employees, but I don't know where they file a grievance, where they can feel that it's confidential at this point in time. I want that. I want that kind of an HR department, the warm and fuzzy one that I'm used to.
The warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what Tom's looking for. Sonny?
Well, I'm not real warm and fuzzy, but I still agree with the idea that we have to have confidentiality in an HR department, which I think we've had a problem with for a while. I'm assuming that once we approve the strategic initiatives, that staff is going to develop some sort of a work plan and timeline by which we will achieve these. I think the big difference between this strategic plan and these goals and objectives, these are all attainable, and they're attainable within a very reasonable amount of time. So what I want to see is the next step is a work plan of how we're planning to achieve those, whether we're directing staff to do that, whether commissioners are going to be involved in that, but the big thing is we need a work plan of how we achieve these goals.
Dan, and then I'll
I
let
agree with that
Jen
100%.
respond.
And I'd like to see some type of, I know you might agree with this, some type of timeline and reporting frequently how we're doing. When I look at this strategic plan, it gives me goosebumps. It's a beautiful strategic plan. I hope this board, and I think this board can live up to it.
And I think that's why I wanted it to kind of come back, not every meeting, but every now and then, we need to know what the
Tell us how
progress
we're
is.
doing.
And
Yeah.
Jen, what's the next step?
Yeah, so we wanted you to affirm kind of that this accurately reflected the conversation that you had. We'll be taking this out to departments and meeting in functional areas with John Amrine is going to facilitate that, to get some feedback on these, and then to be able to bring that feedback back to the board for further discussion, and then at that point, asking you to approve it. We did provide you with a timeline prior to the strategic planning session. We'll go ahead and keep that updated and keep it circulating with this document.
That was the one that was a year.
That's correct.
Well, I think the strategic plan was supposed to come back to us sometime in April, after it's circulated around the departments and they put some action steps to these priorities.
Correct.
All right, but I guess what I'm saying is, we haven't had an HR department for a real long time, and I don't want to wait till April for action items to get rolling on.
So there are many specific initiatives that we are working on a daily basis to achieve. We do have a functioning HR department that is available to serve needs of employees, and we do recognize the importance of that department. Like every other department, it touches, all of our employees and provides very important services. So we are working on that.
Okay. And so to your comment that you just made, I guess I would say it would be really great if we could see your action items that you're working on. You just said there are many things that you are working on. If you could tell us about that, then we'd all be excited like you are about all the progress you're making. So,
Absolutely.
okay?
I'd be happy to share that
Can
information.
we have
with you.
something like March 1st that says, here's the,
Yes.
even though it's not an adopted plan, even, we can say, here's how we're coming on some of these. That would be awesome.
Absolutely.
I would love that.
No, I guess the last thing is that when we met for our strategic planning session, we could be talking about things that are 2 years in advance. And most of these items, if not all of them, we could accomplish within 6 or 9 months or less. So it doesn't even really go into 2018. What we have here, I don't think we have to be talking about in 2018. But if we do get back together in April, either in a study session or another strategic planning session, I think we should talk about another year or so in advance at that time, too.
Yeah, good idea.
I think if progress has been made on a lot of these things, then we would feel comfortable talking about further progress in other areas.
So
Absolutely.
one of the things we'll do with our conversations with the departments is we'll be looking at each one of these priorities and asking, if one of the goals is to be fiscally sustainable, what are some of the goals in your department that seek to achieve that, and what are the objectives? And so this really becomes a living document. So I know you want things accomplished, and things are being accomplished. Things will continue to evolve throughout this process. It's very much so a living and growing document.
Anybody else before this goes out to the departments and they start work on it? Everybody's all good? We don't need a motion or anything, do we?
I don't think so. I think it's
Just direction.
head nodding.
Everybody seems...
I heard Bob's head rattle.
You heard Bob's head rattle? Very good.
It was
Thank
okay.
you. Let me know down here. Okay. Everybody's good with that? Okay. Moving on to new business, we have a request to rescind Resolution 127-2016, Commission on Aging, and that was requested by Cheryl. You want to
Speak to that?
go ahead?
Or make
Start.
a motion?
You can make a motion and then
I would
you can
make the
make the
motion that we rescind the action that was taken in December 2016 to reduce the dedicated millage that was passed in November of 2016.
I would support that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Gorfulet, support by Commissioner Wheelock. Discussion, Cheryl.
I guess I just would share this little thing that happened. Last night I went out to Blair Township for their township meeting, Ron, and and they were talking about a new master plan that they were trying to get passed, and they had a very crowded room of people who were speaking for and against the master plan, and they talked about how they had done a survey of their 8,600 residents, and they had gotten a reply rate of 87, so about 1% of their citizens had responded to this survey. And they were tasked with the very difficult choice as a board of trying to make a decision based on 1% feedback. We are in the most enviable position of all. We had an 83% positive vote of the citizens of Grand Traverse County to provide money out of their pockets for some of the most vulnerable members of our society. We don't know that we're going to need this money, but we may need this money. If we don't need it, we have until September of 2017 to decide that we're not going to authorize it. And that is the reason that I'm asking for this rescission of this prior action.
Bob?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem and why I support it and why I still support refunding that is, yes, we had a large amount of people vote for it. It's a feel-good vote, but if they would have seen the numbers that we've seen, the financial mismanagement in there is really absurd. I mean, they went, in 2013, they had a fund balance of 1.3 million, and the projected fund balance in 2016 is 1.6. So they're hoarding money. I mean, we're talking about wait lists and everything else. Nothing was being done. They had plenty of money to help do anything you would have thought they wanted to do. So I think right now, I think there will still be enough money in the general fund and their fund to do whatever is needed in the future. I think just throwing money away, we owe the taxpayers more than that, than just to say, here's a lot of money, just go do what you want with it. So.
Sonny was next, yes.
Well, my argument in December that I was outvoted was very simple. We need to make, before we return any of this money, we need to make sure that every need of our seniors are being met. If there are any other services that we can be providing, and then when we're all done with that, then we can determine whether or not we have excess money. The Commission on Aging has always been, as my recollection is, that they have maintained a fund balance at approximately 6 months of their service. So in the event that if something happened that the millage didn't pass, they had 6 months to educate the public as to what services were provided, what those services were costing, and therefore they had a lot more than a 15% fund balance, which is what we have. I believe they're over the 50% at this point, without question. But the point is, we have until September to set the designated rate that will go on next winter's tax bill. We didn't have to make this decision last December. We've heard in the last little while about, additional needs. We hear more about wait lists. We hear about the fact that the Commission on Aging needs, different persons, whether it's supervisory personnel to help with HEPA. We need a compliance officer for that. We need technology. All of those are, at least in my mind, are acceptable expenditures of this money that the people voted for us to have to provide services to the seniors. Those are a required component of providing those services to the seniors. So let's evaluate, number one, make sure that the people are getting all the services that they need, that we can provide to them. And then let's make sure we're doing it efficiently. And then if there's money left, then we refund the money. But obviously, there's a big gap from where we are today than where we will be when we are compliant, and we will be compliant. I don't have a doubt in my mind. We will be compliant, but there's some things that have to be done between now and then, and those things are going to cost money. Why would we promise to send back $750,000 now that we may need a portion? Maybe the number that we can send back is $500,000. I don't know. But the big important thing is to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the seniors and that we are compliant.
Tom?
Yeah, What Sonny's saying, I agree. I was here, and I was sitting with the public at that time, before I had a seat here, and I just thought that they were moving with haste, hastily, that they were trying to complete that look, is what it looked like to me, by the end of their term, and I didn't agree. And I thought it was done in haste, especially since it's been repeated many, many times, that the decision didn't have to be made until September of 2017. There was no reason to make the decision last year. And to add to that, there's a new Commission on Aging director coming along, and I think that the director should have an opportunity to be part of the full process, not have us making decisions for them before they come on, when they're going to be coming on soon, I hope. So I think the director, the new director of the Commission on Aging, needs to be involved, and that rescinding this is a good idea. So.
Ron.
I agree that the new director should be able to work with the money that the voters have appropriated, but they didn't appropriate that $1.3 million that was in there, so we're just looking to give back part of the money that they were, call it hoarding, from the fund balance from before. The director will still have the millage money to work with, and we'll give them that opportunity to work with the millage that the voters voted for. So I wouldn't object to looking at this in September, if they needed the money in September. But I'd like to see them work with the budget that they have right now.
Dan?
I respectfully will not be supporting this motion. We're looking at the better part of $1 million. I remember when Georgia Durga was the head of the department, and she said she wanted $1.6 million so that they had this year buffer in case the millage didn't pass. And I don't know, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Sonny, but I don't think you liked that in those days. And, I think, it's hard to say this, I'm going to try to say it in the right way and with all respect, but if the voters decide not to pass the millage, I don't think it's right for us to hoard money so that for a year after they decided not to fund it, we still have it funded. I think we should respect what the voters say. Most departments have a 30% fund balance. The COA has like a 60% fund balance. The person I think we can do a good job with the budget we have. I don't see any reason to rescind this yet. We've got till September to see. But I'll tell you this, you can go to any department head and say, could you use another $700,000? And you say, well, let's have a study committee and we'll come back to you and tell you if we can or not. And there's nobody, including me, that says, could you use some more money? Sure you could. I think we owe it to our voters to be efficient, effective, frugal with their money. I think they deserve this money back. And I worry about the taxpayer, the people that are funding it. We had 90,000 people in this county, and they're funding this. So that's what I have to say about it. I won't be supporting it in all respect for everybody else.
Yeah, I'll also say that their policy, according to what we have here, for the COA fund balance policy is a range of 18 to 20% of year-end revenues. So for years, they have not even observed the policy that they have and have been building it up. I do disagree that this was rushed for them to have some mark on their thing when they left. I mean, if you look at these numbers, there's no reason to have that much fund balance. I also agree if you give a department and say, here's another $750,000, see if you can do something with it, they will do something with it. I know I would if I was in there. So.
Cheryl.
Well, I respect your comments, but I think what it sort of disrespects are the voters. I mean, do you really think the voters didn't know what they were voting for? I mean, I find voters to be pretty smart people. I mean, I know that the COA board was going out and working hard to get this millage passed because they probably more than anybody know about the unmet needs. Now, did they have a fund balance that was really high? Absolutely. Did they have no director for a real long time? Yep, they had no director. Did they have no support for the purchases that they wanted to make? No, they had no support for the purchases they wanted to make. I mean, the bottom line is there's a lot that goes into why they had all this money. It wasn't just them hoarding. It was because they didn't have leadership. They didn't have support for the things that they wanted to get done. And I think that it's unfair to characterize the electorate as just being led. Oh, warm fuzzies, let's give money for this or let's give money for that. I've never found voters to be really that warm and fuzzy. I mean, they're pretty smart about where they want their money to go. And 83% of them, you're going to tell me that 83% of the voters had the wool pulled over their eyes about the COA? I don't think I want to look at the electorate that way. I don't think that's what happened. So
I think Tom and then Dan.
I just want everybody to understand, correct me if I'm wrong, this group, the Commission on Aging, is self-funded. This doesn't have anything to do with our general budget. So if you're worried about the Sheriff's Department or you're worried about another department having funding, this doesn't have anything to do with it at all. Self-funded means that they're on their own. We oversee them. That's very important to know. And exactly what Cheryl said is what I support, is that the millage was passed overwhelmingly, and I don't think that everybody had all the figures at hand when they made their decision last year. I'll take back maybe that it was done hastily, but Ron here also said that he'd be willing to revisit it in September before it actually goes on your tax bill. So I think that's being pretty fair. I would just as soon rescind it, make it real clear that we have to rebuild the budget. We have to include the new director. It's a great opportunity if you're taking on a new job to be able to have a say in what's going on. Like if we made the decision this week and the director comes on next week, why do we have to hurry it even tonight, for that matter? I mean, I just as soon rescind it and start back, do it all over. That's my attitude about that.
Dan and then Sonny.
When we had a $1.6 million fund balance in the COA, we did have Georgia Durga as a director. And I didn't like that big fund balance at 60-70% then, and I don't like it now. So I don't think it's just a function that we didn't have a director. It's been historical that they've had a lot of money in there. So that's one thing. And I forgot my other point.
Sonny?
Well, Dan, you're right. I have complained repeatedly about the percentage of fund balance that they had. But the most important piece and the biggest reason that I want to rescind this motion is the fact to make sure that we have met the needs of the seniors. You know, we don't have to set this. I'm absolutely willing to come back here in August or September and say, okay, look, we've met the needs of our senior society community. We've met the wishes of the voters, and we have X number of dollars left. I'm prepared to give that money back to them, but I'm not prepared to pledge today to give back $750,000 when I do not know that we have met the needs of this senior community.
Bob?
Yeah, but this has been going on for years. I mean, to say that we're not meeting the needs is fine and dandy. Let's work on that. But like I said, the numbers I got from 2013, there was a heck of a fund balance in there. They had direction. They had the COA board still. And the fact that it's a county millage doesn't mean that you just let them go at it and take every dime you can. There's still financial responsibility that's involved with taking the taxpayers' dollars. I think this still would have passed if the general public would have seen these numbers. I think it would have been a lot less than 83%. I know a lot of people I've talked to were not happy when they heard how much the fund balance was. So I still support giving that back, working within the constraints of that millage, and then going from there, because this has historically not been addressing all the needs in that need to be met, and this action here, to me, is not impeding that whatsoever. Again, I think You give this department that money, they're going to use it now because they know it'll be taken. So I think at this point, if that gets rescinded, you've kissed this money goodbye completely, and that's a disservice to the taxpayers because they will find some use for it. So.
There is one key difference, though. Now, the Commission on Aging is going to be under direct oversight of this county board, which was not the case before. There was an appointed board that handled all of the business, if you will, of the Commission on Aging. The county board was not involved in any of that. I've had people from the Commission on Aging board literally tell me it's their money, they can spend it how they want. That's not the goal of this board. I think we are all about the reorganization of the Commission on Aging, but we're all about making sure that the services are needed.
Dan, and then Cheryl.
I don't have anything to say, I just want to vote.
Okay, hold
Okay.
on, I get to talk. We'll have Dan, and then I get to talk.
All right, this is my last statement. Let's see. I don't know that, I remember the PR stuff that the Commission on Aging did, and I never saw them say, we have $1.6 million fund balance, give us more money. I don't know that the public would have voted so overwhelmingly for it had they really known that. That's my last comment.
It was a renewal, not more money.
Pardon?
It was a renewal, it was not more money.
Well, would they have done it if they knew we had a bunch of money in abeyance like that? I don't know.
We'll never know. Okay, so my turn. I think that there's a lot of changes going on in the Commission on Aging. I think that a lot of things have been pointed out that need to be updated and upgraded and changed. I do think, I agree with Dan, we need to be efficient and frugal. Absolutely. We need to let them do that first before we commit to returning money to the taxpayers. There's a lot of things in flux right now with the Commission on Aging. We have no idea how much new technology is going to cost or how many new positions need to be created for the proper oversight that we need. And we will have a new director soon. And I do think, I don't think that rescinding this is saying, here's another $750,000. It's not. It's, here's the money that the taxpayers have offered. Do your absolute best with it. And by that, we would expect that they would be efficient and frugal with it. Especially knowing that there are members of the board that have a goal of giving some back to the taxpayers. And that the new Commission on Aging director will know that, just based on the actions of the board so far. So I think we need to give this organization time to do the things that we expect, to make sure that absolutely everyone is taken care of in the way they should be. There may be services that we don't currently provide that we could, and that we should. So I think knowing that we don't have to set this millage until early fall, those are my comments on that. So I think we can bring it to a vote, and we will have a roll call vote, Bonnie.
Should we ask for public comment?
Absolutely. Sorry. Thank you. Does anybody have any public comment on this particular matter? No? Everybody's good. Okay. Roll call vote, please, Bonnie.
Gore Follett?
A yes vote is to rescind it.
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Klaus?
No.
Johnson?
No.
Lathrop?
No.
Mayor?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
It took four.
Correct.
Does it need a simple majority?
A simple majority.
Simple majority.
Notice was provided at the prior meeting, so yes.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to the next. I had on here.
Note that we're not beyond offering to send money back.
Absolutely.
At the fall, when if we determine that we have met the needs, we have made the improvements that need to be made to this department, and we have surplus money, we will support to send that money back.
But you just voted not to.
No, I didn't. I voted
the
to
time
rescind
being.
the,
It's for the time
rescind the
being.
pledge of $750,000.
Okay, we're going to move on. I had on here to discuss this, the non-contract employee contribution for the defined benefit pension. Where to start with this one? Last April, the board passed a resolution that required, at the time, 11 employees to contribute 10% of their pay into the pension program. And these 11 employees had never been asked to contribute to the pension plan. The resolution at the time also cut their pension multiplier in half from 2.5 to 1.25 going forward. And these employees have asked us to reconsider that particular, at least talk about different options for this particular group of employees. We have received some information from our finance director, a memo from the employees concerned, some good information. And I guess I'd just like to put it out there to see what the board thinks at this time. I know that on March 29th, I believe, we were considering having a full study session about pension.
I thought that was going to be March 8th.
The pension board, I think, decided that they weren't going to be ready in time for that.
Well, let's clarify, because
Okay.
I'm not only interested in hearing from the pension board.
Okay.
I believe we directed administration to bring us all options.
Yes.
All options, not just those supported by the administration or those supported by the pension board.
Right, right.
So-
And at the pension board meeting, we discussed that all options are to be presented. But in order to do that, that takes quite a bit of research, and they aren't going to be ready to, they don't have everything ready to do that. They are asked to have that on March 29th.
I would recommend that the item that you're proposing right now be a part of that conversation, because from
On
what...
March 29th, correct.
Because from
That's
what
what I'm asking.
That's when I would like to have that issue brought forward as well.
Okay.
Primarily because the options that were presented in this packet of information did not include all available options for
Right.
dealing with that issue. And I would like to have all of the options on the table, so that, we were there was a prior presentation, I think, by Mr. Cooney that gave us significantly greater options available for consideration. And I would like all of those options to be fleshed out and presented to us, rather than this one option, because
Right.
I don't find this one option to be palatable. So I'd like to see some others that might be a little tastier.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking. I know that this resolution from last April was a teeny tiny part, and actually was, I think, in response to, in response to a very gigantic projected deficit, and that has changed. And it was a proposal, I think, to try to entice MERS, to show MERS that we were making some structural changes in order to get them to possibly extend the amortization out a few years. That situation has also changed. MERS has extended that option without stipulation to all of its members, to all of the units that use MERS. So I think that we do need to have all of our options, including MERS extending, that there's bonding, there's a hybrid program available that we haven't heard much about. We need to have all of that, and this would come into play at the time. I also think that, all the unions have not had an opportunity to negotiate how they're going to contribute to the pensions and how their employees that are on defined benefit are going to contribute, and what their multipliers are going to be. And historically, we've waited for the unions to negotiate, and then have our non-contract employees follow along. So that's what I'm wondering, if everybody would like to wait and discuss this matter with that as part of a whole pension discussion instead of one team. This was really a very small piece.
Yeah, I mean, I
in
know
advance.
they'd like some resolution on it.
I know.
But I think we do need to have the big overall discussion.
There is the
Make
opportunity.
The best informed decision again.
Is there the opportunity to suspend this resolution and its effects until we have more information, until we've had the opportunity to see all the options?
I wouldn't want to get into that right now, suspending it until we, I think that
Because in
gets
the
messy.
meantime, they're paying in, and that is,
I'm just one person.
I think,
so,
a hardship that is possibly not necessary if we could suspend it.
I'm not
Really?
familiar
Are we-
with such a motion.
To suspend a resolution?
I don't think there's a motion to suspend. I think your option at this point is, if the board wants to change that decision, a motion to rescind would be in order, which, as I've explained in the past, if you give advance notice at a prior meeting, then it's simple majority to pass the motion to rescind. If you wanted to take up that action today, then you would require 2/3 majority under Robert's rules.
Okay. Tom?
I've been taking this in, I think there have been six maybe pension meetings, and I've been to 2 or 3 of them. I was at the last one, and I was convinced that they wouldn't be prepared to present by March 8th. In fact, their next meeting is March 9th, and it'd be nice to see some people at the meeting. There were only 2 people from the public at the last pension board meeting, and I think it's more important than that. I guess I would put out there that at our next regular board meeting, I would make a motion to rescind, since we can't suspend, and then include this in the March 29th meeting. And we're really going to have to plan that one carefully, because I think that meeting could go very long with this in it. So it could be, I don't know if we have limits on study session meetings, or on, that would be a study session on March 29th. I don't know if there's a limit of time on that, but one of the things you would be able to do between now and then to get your word in is to come to the March 9th regular meeting of the pension board. And that's a good idea. I'll say it again. So I guess I would put out there today so that it would be at the next regular meeting, so we can get a better gauge of what's going on. I would at that time want on the agenda a motion to rescind 48-2016, since we can't suspend it. So.
Dan?
A lot of thought went into that, and I think that it should stay the way it is until we've discussed the whole puzzle and put the pieces together. To rescind it would be solving that piece of the puzzle right now, and I don't think we have the information in front of us to do that.
Cheryl?
Presumably, if we reached a different resolution following the pension board meeting, we would have the ability to modify the paychecks of the persons who had been contributing.
That's actually exactly why I was leaning forward. So thank you so much.
Okay.
Through the chair.
You can pay me after the meeting for that.
Yeah, thank you. No, brilliant. So I would have to confirm with MERS, but exactly, if it were the desire of the board to alter the contribution percentage, we perhaps could alter then either the pay for some period of time or through the end of the year, so that the total amount of the contribution that was determined by the board was reflected in there.
So by the end of the year, they would be made whole. If they contributed at 10% for 3 months, and in our discussion of what to do about the pension, we determine we don't want them to contribute anything, that could be rectified. Or if it was determined that they were going to do 3%, that they would be made whole by the end of the year, correct? They would be made whole.
Yeah,
wouldn't-
so I would have to confirm administratively with policy and administrative procedure, but I think that would seem reasonable in concept.
Yes.
And I would propose that. I think that's a more prudent course of action than
That we
rescinding.
wait.
Than rescinding.
With the assurance that if we do change this, they haven't lost the 3 months' worth that they've contributed. If it goes to 3, that's, okay.
I wholly support that they get refunded if it changes. Yeah.
Okay, and I think that if we try to do something today, that it's, some aren't on board with it. If we hear all of the options that there are for solving the pension problem and we come up with what we want to do, I think, and the whole board is on board with that, and then this percentage changes or something changes with that would be preferable.
I think one other piece that was involved in the discussion when this was passed was we thought there was going to be a consistency, that all of the units were going to be asked to pay 10%. Well, in fact, that hasn't happened. Some units have agreed to pay 6%. Some units are still paying 3%, correct? So, and some are paying 0. So, but the point is, I think the important part for this county board is to be consistent. So, if we deem after this March 29th meeting that the number is going to be 6% going forward, then we figure out how to, modify those checks of those 9 people or whatever that's making the 10% contribution today. So at the end of the year, they're even. If we determine it's going to be 5% or whatever, some of those still have to go through the negotiation process, and we know that because some of the contracts are already in place. But I think the most important thing is that we treat all Grand Traverse County employees equally, whether they're contracted or whether they're represented by a union.
And I think that's why it's important to do all the pension stuff at once, discuss it all at once, so that it's not just, let's try this, and let's try this, and see how it works, that now that, I think that they can come together with some very good ideas to somehow, at least we could give direction as to how we want it to be tackled.
Well, many things have changed in our budget, and many things have changed with MERS. So, all of that information needs to be provided to us.
Dan?
I agree with that, but I want to point to the public that that's just what we did last year, was looked at everything, and administration came to us with a plan, and I don't know, a majority of the board voted for it. They thought it was the right thing to do at the time. Now, circumstances may have changed, so we can reconsider. But it wasn't something done out of anger or hate for the employees or anything like that. It was trying to be fiscally responsible to our citizens.
Okay. So, yes, Bonnie?
So, Commissioner Mayor, you are not going to make notice today that you're going to rescind on March 1st?
I didn't say that.
I will let, if I could,
I'll probably have one more chance to say that before we finish the subject.
Right, but just so you know that I will be absent that day, and I
Okay.
believe Commissioner Gorfulet will be absent as well.
Okay.
On the 29th?
On the 1st of March.
March 1st.
Maybe it's premature, but I'd like to hear from the public if there's any public comment before we
Absolutely,
get to
that was my next thing. So if anybody, knowing what we've said, that we're going to look at it on March 29th and everything that we've talked about, is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this? Bob?
Yes, Bob Cooney, Grand Traverse County Prosecuting Attorney. I just want to say that back in March and April when this was discussed, my simple request was that this board be fair to all employees. There are, by my count, 67 defined benefit employees at this point. I think it was about 88 back in March of this year. Now we're down to about 67. But there were only 9 employees that were affected by Resolution 4816. But I want to, so I appreciate the board deciding to take up this matter and to actually spend some time thinking about how to treat all of those employees fairly. Because again, that's all that we've ever asked for. And I think it's good that you're putting this off until March 29th, so you have time to get some numbers and really study the issue. But I do want to point out one thing the chairwoman brought up, that these employees had never contributed towards the pension.
Financially.
Financially.
Yes, sir.
And here are resolutions from 1989 through 1999 that show that in 1990, 1991, 1992, 91, the non-contract employees gave up 1% each of those years specifically to buy retirement benefits. 1992 and 1993, they gave up 1.5% each of those years to buy retirement benefits. 1996, 4%. 1999, 1.6%. That's 10.6%. The elected officials from 1989 through 1996 gave up between 5.7 and 6.4% specifically to purchase retirement benefits. So, as Judge Power pointed out at your strategic planning session, it's not as though these employees have never contributed a dime. So.
Thank you, Bob, for clarifying that. Anybody else? Yes.
Are there any employees that don't fall under what he just said that have not contributed to their defined benefit program announced?
No, I don't believe so, because I read through those contracts and agreements as well, and from what I understand, that's how they contributed.
That included all 11 of those employees that we're talking about?
That they did contribute by giving up cost of living raises and things like that over the years. They have.
Thank you.
So they might not have had it deducted from their pay, but their pay was certainly less because of it, to keep the pension benefit at a zero contribution. Okay, so we're good with March 29th. We will save this information. It will become part of the study session on all kinds of good things pension. Every single option, whether you like it or not.
And Madam Chair, a question?
Yes, ma'am.
I know that this is down for notices, but
Yeah,
we're
we
talking
talked about it
now,
earlier.
so we probably don't need to address it again.
No, we won't.
I would request that any materials that are going to be given to us relative to this study session be provided to us at least 5 days in advance of this meeting.
Good point.
I need time.
So that would be the Friday before, right?
I don't
Saturday,
know.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, yes. The Friday before. Tom?
Chris Forsyth, do you have any feeling about it at all, whether, well, I think you feel comfortable with us waiting till the 29th, and my idea to rescind is probably premature. Would you agree?
Well, you know, as long as you give advanced notice. So do you have to give notice now? No.
Okay.
As long as you give advanced notice.
So realistically, we'd have a study session on the 29th, and then it would come up again on, can you check the calendar? What would be the next regular meeting date?
7th.
April 7th. So you would be able to say at the March 29th meeting, hey, I feel that this should be rescinded, and I'm going to put it on for the next meeting.
I'd be able to do it at a study session?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually April 5th.
Okay.
It's any kind of, it's any prior notice.
All right, I'm comfortable with that. I would wait until the 29th to make that decision, and I'll take back what I said about putting it on the agenda for our next regular meeting.
Okay.
But I do think it could be done differently, and I do think all the employees need to be treated alike. And I wasn't able to vote on it back in April, but I was present in the public, and I've thought a lot about it, so.
Okay. So we have a general consensus. That's a good time to talk about all of this together. March 29th, okay? All right, lots of nods, and is Bob's head shaking over there? Hear it rattling around? Okay. We're going to move on to new business, C. we have an offer on our Keystone property. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want Jean to talk about that?
I'm going to pitch this to Jean.
Okay. Ms. Durenzi?
I will give you a little bit of
if you could
background
come.
there.
Okay.
Well, she comes up, last year, the board voted to put 2 parcels up for sale, one of them being the property that we're talking about tonight, and then the other one is the Whitewater property. And we have received an offer on the Keystone property, and so that's what Jean is going to provide us information about.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jean Durenzi with the Planning and Development Department. And in September of last year, we made the decision to put the 2 properties, as Jen indicated, out. In 1994, we purchased the Keystone property for $225,000. And it was specifically, we purchased it for a materials recycling facility and a septic treatment facility. It was zoned industrial. And at that time, we thought that that would be where we would put that facility. We decided not to do that. So it's been sitting vacant. It's right next to the T-Bays soccer complex. We went out for an RFP for a realtor. We entered into an agreement with Mike Street of Coldwell Bankers to market this property. He has marketed it, and Mike is here today along with the potential buyer. Dennis Ireland is representing the buyer as well. There is an offer, as you received in your packet or via email, and I'm asking that we being staff and possibly a committee, be able to talk and negotiate with the buyer, so we just don't accept the first offer that we have. Maybe we can negotiate with that instead of just sending you the first offer we have. If you give us an opportunity to counteroffer and negotiate with the potential purchaser. So that's my request today, is to have at least a commissioner with administration and facilities director and myself to be able to meet with the realtor and the potential buyer. The purchase price that we had out on the realtor site was $525,000.
Okay. I had discussed with Jen earlier about going forward, not with this purchase because we already have an offer on this purchase, but going forward, if we're gonna put some properties out for sale, that we ought to have a policy. Do you want to describe that policy, if you wouldn't mind, that we talked about?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we don't have is a real property disposal policy. And so something that would give us some guidelines for staff that the board would adopt, which is something that Jean mentioned would be a committee structure. You know, what are the processes that we should go through? How long should a property be listed? If a property, an offer is received at the list price, we would bring that back to the board prior to that time expiring. We can put some parameters on it so that when we go through this, we can work under the guidelines of the board and then be able to bring you back kind of the best and final offer that we've been able to get.
So, Bob, what is
Yeah, I'd like to see, and I know this will be up for discussion later, but I'd like to see also in there, what are you doing with those proceeds when you sell them? I mean, ideally, we'd use it to help reduce the pension fund obligation, the unfunded part of it, but I think it'd be nice to have that also in writing to say this is what we're going to use the funds for that are obtained from property disposal.
Sonny?
Couple of points. One, when we talk about this value of the property, I guess I'd like to hear from our equalization director as to what the property value is. We got a memo from Karen McIntyre in Jean's office about the value. I haven't heard from the equalization department whether they agree with that value. In one of the notes, I seen a value of $856,000. Well, if there's a value of $856,000, I don't know why we'd be talking about an offer of $400,000. But most importantly, I ask you to look at the map. We talk about this north property being vacant. That property is not vacant. That property holds the only access road we have to the soccer fields. It holds all of the north, it holds probably 50% of the parking for that facility. If any of you have been by there when we're holding the the autumn solstice tournament or one of the the Cherry Cup tournament that holds in August, and try to figure out where you're going to find a place to park because your kids are going to play in 20 minutes and the other teams aren't off the field yet. We don't have parking now. We have people parking up and down the street and up and down the road and over on the railroad grade, and the railroad has a fit about that. And we spent a year, or pretty close to a year, identifying that crossing to get a crossing across the railroad tracks to provide access to that property. We had to identify one to vacate. Didn't we find something out in Fife Lake or somewhere, Gene? Do you remember?
It was another vacation.
Some little two-track road out in Fife Lake was a designated railroad crossing with the Michigan Department of Transportation. That had to be officially vacated before we could create this driveway into our soccer complex. And then, even after MDOT approved our making this access, the railroad had very specific requirements that required how that driveway be constructed and who could construct it. It wasn't just how it had to be, where it had to be, but they were specific as to who would construct it. If we sell this piece of property, we no longer have access to our own soccer complex. We cannot cross that railroad grade anywhere other than there. Now, some of you may remember that south of the fields, there's a two-track drive that comes out in front of the substation that is it Wolverine Power owns?
No, that's ITC.
ITC owns?
Keystone.
Anyway, the Keystone substation. Homeland Security insisted that we close access to that property right after September of 9/11.
And the railroad didn't like it either.
And the railroad wasn't happy about the way it was either. But the big point was, people look at that other drive and say, well, just go back and use the other drive. We cannot use that other drive. It crosses across ITC property. It's not our property. The only access we have to the Keystone Soccer Complex is that railroad crossing right there. It's probably at least a third of the total parking we have for that facility, right there. So when we talk about this property and we're going to sell it because it's vacant, let us not forget what we need the property for.
But when we talked about this, Commissioner Wheelock, in September of 2016, we acknowledged that we're not selling the ingress and egress to the soccer fields. That's our property. We lease to T-Bays for soccer, so we're not giving up being able to access our own property. So we're very well aware of that, and we would not give that up. So that would be part of how we would participate in the purchase and be able to ensure that when we sell the property, we do not sell the right or the ingress and egress of that property.
So the ingress egress we retain that. What about the parking?
Yes, we would have the parking.
So instead of being 36 acres, it's going to be down in the 30.
Well, we would come back with you on the total amount of the property.
And we note that the only access that the future owner of that property is probably going to have is also that egress.
Well, remember, we have to rezone that as well, because it was rezoned to recreational, which completely diminished. Garfield Township would not rezone it back to industrial, which I would not recommend rezone it back to industrial, just because of the previous, under public comment, Jerry Doback. The observatory is a very important neighbor to this, and we want to ensure that whoever we sell this to is a good neighbor, and ensure that we get it back on the property taxes is one thing, but also ensuring that we are the good neighbor and whoever we purchase it to will adhere to that.
There was a time we talked about building baseball diamonds on this parcel of property. And at that time, we looked at the possibility of bringing an access road off from Brimley. Because of the elevation change between Brimley Road and this property, in order to get far enough away from the traffic light, far enough away from the railroad tracks, we were having horrendous problems trying to get visibility back up the hill to allow that. The Road Commission had all kinds of concerns about that. And because of the topography difference, that slope from Brimley Road was going to come halfway across the property in order to be an acceptable grade to get them back onto the property anyway. So we need to remember that the truly only good viable access to this piece of property is that driveway we created across the railroad tracks.
Dan?
Okay, switch hats for a second. You said that we're going to develop a policy for selling and accessing. One of the things I'd like to see included in that is conflict of interest, that none of us on the board have anything to gain, or our relatives have anything to gain by the selling or properties. So that concerns me. Not just, I'm not talking about this board, I mean any board.
Cheryl?
I'm concerned about giving away the mineral rights, and I'm concerned about a listing and sale 30 days. A 30-day listing, I mean, if I were selling my house and after 30 days it hadn't sold, I certainly wouldn't reduce it by 25% and accept that offer. I mean, I know you want to negotiate, but I'm just saying I'm concerned about that. We're not required to do a fire sale. We're not desperate to get rid of this property. That seems, and I thought I had read in the document that the buyer said that he was not interested, that this was a final offer, and there wasn't going to be any room for negotiation. Didn't I read that? I'm sure I read that. There was a statement in there. It was a final offer, take it or leave it. So, I mean, you know, it's great to say let's go negotiate, but if the buyer's saying this is it, there's no room to negotiate. So, but I do think that any of the properties that we have, you know, if we're going to give up mineral rights, then there's a value to that. And I do think that a 30-day turnaround is, you know, it's not a fire sale. We don't have to sell.
Bob?
Yeah, and I guess I would suggest that maybe you get a standing ad hoc committee together or something for this, because I think it would be something where I think you would want more than one commissioner there to discuss the ins and outs and everything, because it will get complicated. Because I agree, you don't want to just give it away. Yeah, the money would be nice, but you also don't want to just get rid of it, you know, because that property, there's not that much use for it. You know, I do have a good concern with the observatory there. You know, it's something you don't think about. What kind of lighting would you have, whatever you're putting in there? And I also wonder, would it be easier just to carve that out of the acreage and just not, you know, in the future to just not even have that as part of the acreage that's for sale, or is that because it's only access? So, you know, I guess there's a lot of questions where I would suggest just getting an ad hoc committee together or something, you know, maybe a standing one, or however that would be worded, to say, let's kind of work with Gene and the other groups to say, here's what's being offered, what are the opinions.
And I think that's what the policy would be designed to do, that when we have a parcel up for sale, when it comes to, they've provided an offer, okay, now the policy takes effect, these are the people that get together to discuss it and negotiate it before it comes to the full board.
And I will say that the railroad did shut off the entrance for a while there coming at the substation before they got that one. So they were in quite the conundrum. Big word for me. But
wow, Bob.
They were in the, you know, where they couldn't gain access. So I know they had a lot of work, and a lot of people jumped through hoops to get that access the way it is now. And if something did happen, that covers the other parking lot to the other side and all the way around. So, and yeah, any weekend you go by there and the weather can be horrendous, and that place is packed, you know. So I get winded just watching them.
So these are all things that, once the policy went into effect, these are all things that standing committee, if you will, would get together and say, okay, we have a piece of property, we have an offer, here's the things that we need to make sure, the mineral rights, the egress, all of those things would be considered before it's brought to the full board. So I think everybody's in agreement. Jen can get to work on that.
On the policy?
On the policy.
Which she'll bring back to the board.
Yes, but right now, we have an offer on this ahead of the policy. So what would be our thoughts on what to do? Because we don't have a policy right now, and the policy will be great once it comes in, but we have an offer on this piece of property, and we are absent a policy. Tom?
Does he have an expiration date on his offer, or is it open?
The expiration date, Mike, do you want to respond? You'd have to come up to the podium and introduce yourself, please. already expired.
Mike Street at Coldwell Banker. We received the offer on the 9th, and the time frame has expired. They gave us a short period, so the time frame has expired, but their clients have verbally said that we can continue the process, even though it has expired.
Bob?
I mean, I think at the minimum, get an ad hoc committee together, but I'm not ready tonight to really give a lot of discussion. I guess I have more questions than answers as to, you know, what could we eventually use the property for versus selling it and this, that, because $400,000 in the big scheme of things isn't a whole lot, but I guess I have more questions than answers, and I really don't know yet exactly what to ask, I hate to say, too.
Fair enough.
Well, and you know, I feel badly because obviously a lot of work has already gone into listing this and, you know, the work that's been done, but sometimes we have to do that to figure out where we're going to go, because we have a lot of property in the county that we might be looking at selling or doing something with down the road. So, you know, I feel bad, but I just think that right now it really feels like we're not ready to do something, even to the point of having an ad hoc committee to look at this. There's just too many questions about how are we going to deal with the sale of a finite asset. I mean, the last I knew, they're not making more land. So, you know, we really need to think through all the ramifications of a sale. So.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts on this? We haven't done this before, so this is a new thing for all of us to delve into. Dan?
Well, I am concerned about the people that put a lot of work into this, and I'd like to hear from them what we can do to keep them interested and not see this as a thwart. So can we ask them that?
Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on how long we could take to come up with a decision or a policy or?
Well, time is of the essence. You know, buyers are always very anxious to get an answer. I think that there is a certain amount of patience, I would think. Again, we could have Denny Ireland come up and talk and on behalf of the buyer to give his perspective on that. But come on up, Denny, you can talk about that.
Denny Ireland with Lakeside Properties, Elk Rapids. Excuse me. The buyer here is Bob Dross Landscaping up in Petoskey. He apologizes for not being here tonight. He had a prior commitment and he has to be out of the state tonight. But he would be a good person for some of the board members here to sit down and hear him. He does excellent work, high-quality landscaping work. The meeting he's at tonight is in North Carolina. He's one of 10 top landscapers in the country, and they meet twice a year, and it just happens to be today and tomorrow. Excuse me. I provided you with some information about rezoning. I did a little research on that. Had no idea how long it was going to take. It looks to be about a 6-month process. Talked to the planner at the township yesterday, and he said that you've got about 3 months or 2 ways to rezone that property. One is for mixed use, and the other one that he is leaning towards is an ag designation. In an ag designation, you can have a greenhouse, nursery, which is what this business is about. It's a very quiet use of the property. Incidentally, Jerry Dobeck, who spoke first, I happen to know him just over the phone. I've talked to him several times. This is the first time we ever met. And his opinion was that the landscape business would be a very compatible neighbor to the observatory there. He mentioned that a ball field was proposed at one time, but he said the lights at night would not be a good thing. The rezoning, whatever you do with any buyer, you're going to need to have a survey. That's the first thing that they require at the township level. The planner at the township felt that the access should not be a part of the sale, the one that you were talking about. Property line should be north of the parking lot. And I don't see that as a problem unless you can't get access off of Brimley.
You'd have to build up, I think, to get access there.
The topography is horrible coming off from Brimley by the time you get back far enough away from the railroad tracks and the intersection. Road Commission's not here, right?
No.
Okay.
Andy's here.
Well, maybe there's a way to, still use the railroad crossing for this business too. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I would be opposed to allowing a purchaser of this property at any point to help us to maintain that access roadway and provide access through that easement. I'm just saying that if we give away, if we sell this easement, we do not have access.
There might be some weight restrictions even on the access that was built. I don't know. So.
Probably.
I think.
We just have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think actually Dan's question was, do you feel that the buyer would give us a little time to
Yes.
come up with our policy so that we could, right from the get-go, do this right?
I think you probably need to give him some assurances that you're going to work with him. He'll be happy to give you all the time in the world because he doesn't need to start up the business tomorrow. He just told me yesterday he's got a job out in the peninsula that he's handling from Petoskey, and he's got another one over in Frankfurt. So he sees a lot of business down in this area, and that's why he wants to have a branch office down here. He will probably employ around 10 people, he's thinking, when he gets up and running. So.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Dan?
Yeah,
okay.
I just don't want to, it looks like he might be the ideal person.
We don't want to scare him
And
off.
I don't want to have him become disenchanted. So.
I'd really like you to meet him. He's quality businessman.
Is he willing to negotiate on terms? Because the paperwork we received said it was a firm offer.
That didn't come from him.
Well, who did that come from?
I don't know.
I wonder if the meaning was that it was a valid offer instead, and we maybe, but it did say firm offer.
It said firm
It
offer.
said a firm offer, and then take it or leave it, basically, was the way it was, I read it.
That's how I read it, too.
And we all read it.
I haven't seen that, and that's not what he has said to me, so.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Well, let's
so
keep talking.
I think we.
But I don't know if he's going to pay any more money either. It's his money.
But I think then we have time to come up with a proper policy so that we don't have this one-off of selling one property out of policy and not with the right procedure.
Okay, I need to report back to him. Do you have any idea how long that would be, or?
When can you come back with the policy?
Your next meeting.
March 1st. Okay.
In that.
We'll see it and we can comment on it, Cheryl, at least. Bob?
Yeah, and I want to echo what Cheryl was saying earlier, that don't take this as a definite, we're slamming the door right now, because, it does sound like it's a great fit in there, but I think we need to make sure we're doing everything right to begin with, and so.
Yeah, we're just beginners in this,
We are.
We're not in the real estate business, and we don't want to be in the real estate business.
Some days I don't either.
Ron?
Do we need to make a counter offer so that there's something holding your customer and holding us that, we're interested?
I think if you gave him assurances that you just put this at abeyance for the time being, and you need to kind of get your ducks in a row, and then you'll come back to him, that you're not going to continue to market it out to somebody else and seek a higher bidder.
I don't know that we should make that assurance.
Yes, please.
Representing the county, I would not recommend taking the property off the market. It's for sale, and we should take whatever offers come in, and we should not obligate ourselves to any particular buyer. And so that's my perspective.
I agree.
Okay.
We don't know how long this process is going to take.
We don't. But we do need to get a process. We need to get a process in place.
We hope that this guy's still interested when we get everything together, and if it's the ideal spot, et cetera, then he will be interested, and if it doesn't happen, it wasn't meant to be, so.
Right now, it feels like the dog chasing the car, and then we caught the car, and now what? So.
Kind of came in before we were ready. Tom?
Thank you, Dennis, for clarifying
Yes.
what his offer was, because we were all under another assumption, so.
Okay.
And Dennis, were you aware that you would either be getting an easement for this property to access the property, or that you were not going to be?
Well, the way it was, correct me, Mike, if I'm wrong here, but the way it was originally listed, it included the railroad crossing.
Yeah, we have to work on that.
That's how.
The property tax code number, I think we've got it in that page. Actually, and there's a picture in there too.
Right.
That Google Earth.
Yep.
That's actually on the property.
Right.
But I think you need to.
And it's not for sale.
I think that needs to be very clear.
I do know that,
You can't
yeah.
sell that right
I believe that that's on the property as well, and that's what I was wondering, if you were
We can grant an easement.
made aware that it
Sure.
would be an easement through the property to access the soccer field, or, okay.
I guess the bottom line is, if you can't get onto the property from Brimley Road, nobody's going to buy it without that railroad access.
That's right.
Well,
So
You've got to work something out.
They could do an
yeah.
easement.
But I think it's real obvious that this needs a lot more work
Absolutely.
and a lot more discussion and process in place to make sure that all our bases are covered when we do these things, so.
But I'm
Okay.
excited about a nice offer from a great guy and a great business. And I know he put a lot of work into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this, yes.
Right,
Justin,
and
yes?
in addition, when that property was put on the market, basically, we listed 36 acres, which included that easement area, and it was a concern by Gene and Tom Menzel that there was going to be access for the soccer fields. No question about that. My concern is, I think the board has to be convinced that the value of the property is quite certain, and you only find out that based upon putting the property on the market during an adequate period of time and trying to get as much exposure and also get other offers. And I think that's a big hurdle that you have to take a look at and study, is what is the true market value of that property? How do you accomplish that? And again, we've had the property in the market for 30 days. The offer that came in is at $400,000. The question is that fair and reasonable? And again, I think that you folks have to be convinced of that, and that process has to, go underway, and I'm not sure how to accomplish that, whether it's a closed-door meeting or how you would do that. So again, I'm here to be available whenever you need it.
Well, I think it's important to note that, number one, I would, somewhere along the way before we determine if this is the correct actual value, which I think I would be asking our equalization director to give me that information. But more importantly, we got to make sure what we're exactly selling. And I, at least in my mind, when I looked at this thing and that railroad access is included in that sale, I spent a number of hours in meetings talking about how we were going to get that access one way or the other, and trying to identify a railroad crossing somewhere where a two-track went across a railroad track that hasn't seen a train on it for 10 years, but it didn't matter. The Michigan Department of Transportation was not going to give me an access across that railroad track until I could identify one that could be vacated. Wow. So I don't want to go through that grief again.
Did you find it with your own four-wheeler?
Yeah, something like that. But the point is, I don't have a problem if we decide, okay, we're going to sell 36 acres, we're going to sell 32 acres or 28 and a half, whatever it happens to be, and as part of that sale, we agree to allow access across that property. But I'm absolutely convinced that this county board, on behalf of Grand Traverse County and its citizens, needs to retain ownership of the access to that property.
Dan?
I think we're on a great learning curve here, that we can use this template a few times, because we could really put a dent in our debt by selling some properties we really don't need.
If we do it right.
We do it right, yeah.
Yes.
Well, one of the things you have to remember is with our property inventory is where the property came from, how it came to us. Because we have a lot of property that even though you might think we want to sell it, we can't sell it.
Well, I think that's a great conversation for another day.
Absolutely. So, we are in consensus that we are going to hold off on this, and Jen is going to come up with a policy so that we have the proper procedure for doing this. Okay, we are going to move on to...
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jean. We are going to move on to second public comment. We have a second chance here for public comment for anybody who would like to. Once, twice, 3. Okay, we're going to move on to district court presentation. They have waited patiently. Thank you very, very much. This is another one of our 5-minute presentations. We had 2 this month.
Oh, who did you have?
We had 911.
Central Dispatch.
Central Dispatch, just because we didn't have any in January, so we had 2, and in the future, we'll have 1 at, I think, the second meeting of every month, so.
They did fail at the 5 minutes.
But we had a lot of questions.
Well, I wrote mine out and practiced in advance.
Okay.
And I had to borrow glasses, and they really don't work, Tammy.
Carol can talk really fast.
I can talk really fast. Carol
Okay.
Stocking, Court Administrator with the District Court. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for having the District Court here for the 5-minute department presentation. I'm bringing you topics that I think that are big in scope and not, picky-uni kind of things that I don't know that you're interested in. If you ever are interested in case numbers or the number of new cases filed or collections or anything like that, we can present that to you. But today I'm looking at long range and scope kind of things, changing things that are changing the way we do our work, changes to the work we do, and obstacles that we face. So you are our funding source, and so we're here hoping that you'll support our efforts. First, I want to talk about OnBase. OnBase is the electric files and file management system that we use. To start out, helping trial courts implement technological advances to increase efficiency and improve service to the public is one of the State Court Administrative Office's strategic objectives. In 2015, the State Court Administrator's Office worked with the legislature, courts, and other stakeholders in developing and passing legislation to authorize, design, and implement a statewide e-filing system for Michigan courts. Such a system will enable litigants to electronically file documents from anywhere at any time without waiting in line or traveling to the courthouse. And remember that traveling to the courthouse, that'll come back in a minute. Our district court started using OnBase for electronic files and file management in the Civil Division in 2012. We were not part of the state's pilot e-filing project like our circuit court is, but the state is in the middle of selecting the vendor to allow all courts to e-file, which we hope to be doing yet this year. We are currently designing and mapping the paperless process for our probation department. Grayson Chen Lanvoy with the IT department has been a wonderful resource, working with my staff, Dawn Wagner, Pam Blue, and Beth Lako, in identifying documents and mapping the workflow. We hope to be fully functioning paperless in the probation department by summer. The final area to be designed for paperless in the district court would be traffic and criminal, which we hope to begin as soon as we complete the probation department. This will take IT resources and funding for licenses, which is where all you come in. Moving on to the next issue or topic is specialty court programs. Our court is proud of the specialty court programs that we have in operation. Sobriety Court presided over by Judge Stepka deals exclusively with second and third offense drunk drivers and has been operational since 2001. Domestic Violence Court started with Judge Phillips in 2003 and focuses on fast-tracking these cases for the benefit of the families involved. In the recent past, we've recognized the increase in serious drug cases such as heroin possession and distribution. Statistics that Bob Cooney's office has provided to us from January through May 9th of 2016 shows that our prosecutor charged 66 individuals with 111 counts of use, possession, or delivery of narcotic drugs, including heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, or a similar prescription opioid or narcotic drug. Working with the prosecutor and the Community Corrections Department, or program, to find a community response to this program, we started a true drug court. We wrote 2 grants, one to cover the cost of an intensive probation officer dedicated to the caseload, and the other grant was for $50,000 to cover therapeutic services for those in the program and program supplies. We currently have 5 participants in this very new program, with 4 more being considered. Another initiative that we've been working on is a community outreach court. This program has been spearheaded by a local attorney who works for the Legal Services of Northern Michigan, Heather Abraham, who saw a need and approached us with this idea. This is not a new concept. Ann Arbor's Community Outreach Court has been operational for many years. The program is tailored to the unique needs of people experiencing homelessness or are at risk of homelessness, who demonstrate sincere and sustained efforts to end their homelessness or their risk of being homeless. The purpose of this program is to offer these individuals the opportunity to resolve certain types of civil and criminal infractions by crediting their personal efforts to address the root causes of their homelessness toward their outstanding fines, costs, warrants, and jail time. Many community agencies are partnering with us in this effort. And finally, and this is where I said, don't forget what I said back here about trying to keep people away from the courthouse. The final issue is that we have a continual struggle with parking. There just isn't enough parking. On any given day, between the circuit court, district court, family court, probate court, dockets, and staff parking, we just do not have enough parking options available. The number of staff in the circuit court, friend of the court, Department of Corrections, district court, family court, probate court, and the prosecutor's office totals 109 staff people. So that's all the red brick building, all of the Hall of Justice, and the prosecutor's office, not taking into consideration anybody who works in the jail. That's 109 people. Of the 109, 17 individuals have reserved spots, leaving 92 employees to park in what are considered open spots. This does, let's go on to go, the total number of parking spots in the lots that surround the jail and the Hall of Justice total 174. Of the 174, 114 are considered open. So we have 92 employees for 114 spots. That leaves 22 spots for the public. That's a problem. Because on any given jury selection afternoon, which is every Wednesday afternoon in the district court, we invite 40 jurors in for jury selection. Finance will oftentimes get a parking ticket, because I will pay a parking ticket for a juror who's parked illegally, who can't find a parking spot in our parking lot. So, thank you for hearing me, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer, and please, if you ever want to come visit the district court, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Just as a guest, right? Yeah.
Good job.
What's that?
That's one way not to answer questions. She runs away from the podium.
Do you have any questions?
Why don't we use Keystone, set up a temporary parking lot satellite there?
Get a shuttle.
Bust the shuttle,
There you go.
so.
There you go.
And we can get baited to bus you in.
I mean,
Thank you.
That is the bad thing, is we got nowhere to put park.
Thank you, Carol, very much. That was wonderful. I think that's exactly what we're looking for. Yes, Cheryl has a big thumbs up over there. We move on to notices. We've already talked about our study session, March 27th, March 22nd, or 29th? March 22nd?
29th.
Yeah, I know, March 29th, study session on the pension. March 22nd, we are going to have an attorney-client update regarding collective bargaining, and that will be a closed session. We'll be in here first, and then we'll move, and then we'll come back.
So what is that, a week earlier?
It's March 22nd, Wednesday.
That's a normal.
A normal study session?
No, that would have, yeah, it would have been a study session.
No, that's the fourth Wednesday.
It's the fourth, there's 5 Wednesdays.
There's 5 Wednesdays in a
I know,
Hardly seems fair.
I know. Yes, Bob?
I have a notice.
Yep.
I know this isn't commission stuff, but for those that know Claude Okert, he was getting his Eagle Scout tonight in Kingsley, and a lot of work goes into that, and I had the privilege of, when I first moved here, I opened my mouth and volunteered to be Cub Master there in Kingsley. So I just remember him when he was this young, and he stuck through the program, and he's, like I said, he's getting awarded his Eagle Scout tonight. They're probably way done with it, but just wanted to give him a shout out about that. So.
Anybody else, Tom?
Yes, there's a notice here. It's probably posted at the front door as well. Tomorrow at noon, the ad hoc committee for finding a search firm for a new county administrator. We're having a meeting, public is invited. We'll be discussing our process.
Do you have a question?
I think they are. They're supposed to be.
It's on the calendar.
When you look on the calendar on the main website?
Can we have someone check that out,
Maybe not
please?
always, but it has been there.
Look right now.
Okay.
Yeah. pension one, it has
Bonnie will
been there.
check
I've
into
seen
it,
that, so.
and we'll make sure things get posted on there. Yes? Thank you.
Are you taking comments now? Is that what this
I have
amounts to?
one more notice, but you
Okay.
can go ahead.
No, no, no,
Oh, I went, and I'll try to make this quick. I went last Friday to the Grand Traverse Resort on behalf of the county to accept the 2% awards. And I wanted to just give a quick list of what, the 2% awards, if you want to apply for that and you're a nonprofit, it has to go through a governmental agency. So many nonprofits come to us and apply through the Board of Commissioners. So those that applied through us and received grants, we had the Grand Traverse Parks and Rec, the Sheriff's Office, Cherryland Humane Society, Homestretch, Goodwill Homeless Services, Dan's House, Michigan Indian Legal Services, United Way, Project Cherry Tree, Child and Family Services of Northwest Michigan, Conservation Resource Alliance, Father Fred Foundation, Great Lakes Children's Museum, and Child and Family Services of Northwestern Michigan. On behalf of the Board of Commissioners, I accepted $235,005.87 of just under $900,000. That's what we, on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, accepted. That's what their 2% was for this cycle. So I think that shows they're a good community partner, and they do give very generously to lots of the programs that the county also supports. So, and if anybody would like to come to one of these, it's a very cool ceremony. They have drummers, and it was very fun. I was very honored to be able to go and accept on behalf of the county. So.
I just wanted to, also for the Grand Traverse Band, Mike Shanaquet passed recently. He was in a snowmobile accident. He fell through ice on a lake. So be careful out there. And my heart goes out to that family. Excuse me. I was out there today, and the drum was playing, and they were singing, and there were at least 400 people present at the Grand Traverse Resort.
Cheryl, did you have something? And then
Yeah, I would just like to renew my request for copies of exit interviews. I know I made that request about a month ago, and, if I could get some of them, that would be helpful. I don't need to have them from all 20 or 30 people who've left the county in the last year and a half, but the statement was made that the administration did conduct exit interviews, and I would like to see copies of the exit interviews that we have available. My other comment is that there was a policy, I don't know if it was a policy, there was a plan put in place by the prior board about a year ago to eliminate the need for the board to have any say in staffing changes. That was January 27th of last year, and the staffing plan amendment resolution that was passed basically took off of the agenda for this board any oversight into any hiring or firing or changes of staffing. And I'm not suggesting that I necessarily think that this board should be involved in all of those decisions, but seeing that we are in the process of looking for a new administrator and we'll have a new leadership head, I would like to request that any major department changes, like human resources or other director head type positions, that we would be given the opportunity to at least look at those candidates before they were offered a position, because when the administrator leaves, we're going to be left with the people that the administrator has selected. It won't be our choice necessarily. It won't be the choice of the new administrator. And I just think that it would benefit the entire organization if the wisdom of this board could be utilized for an advice and consent role, basically, with regard to that. So I put this down for consideration at the March 15th meeting.
Okay.
So it's just sort of a heads up that I would like us to address that, but I wanted to flesh it out.
Okay. Anybody else? Sunny? Oh,
Jody had a comment.
did you have a comment, or can we just put it on the agenda for the... Go ahead.
Okay, just to respond to the first item about the exit interviews, in advance of the strategic planning session, actually, I did have our direct staff to go through every personnel file for every separation for the 6 months, for the last 6 months of 2016, to locate how, if and how, we actually documented those exit interviews. So when I had referenced that I knew that exit interviews had been held, that was simply by verbal confirmation from former HR staff that, for instance, oh, well, I can't at that time because I'm having an exit interview. I did then have confirmation through the report of the staff that went through all of those personnel files that no documentation occurred for the reason of separation. So there's no, at this time, current way for us to compile or even know any of that data. They did go back through and create a spreadsheet of all of those personnel files they did go into to figure out if by way of the resignation letter there was any indication of why they were leaving, whether they stated it was for family purposes or other employment. Many times, most often, I would say, the resignation letter didn't contain a reason. It just simply said that I'm resigning effective on X date.
So we have no formalized exit interview
No, but
process.
that is something that we are looking at. I did find back from 2010, one Word document with questions, and another, I think, dated from 2013, that just shows that it was inconsistently applied, but we're looking to implement such thing if we want to be able to do any trend analysis.
Okay, Sunny, you had a comment?
Yeah. I had an interesting phone call last Friday and then a follow-up phone call Monday morning from a company called CGL Communications. Said that they are under contract with Grand Traverse County to provide videos to put on the county's website. And they were, I had several questions for the young man on both phone calls about, where did this contract come from, who authorized it, when did it start, how much is it costing, which are really strange questions, because what he was calling me for was supposedly he wanted to highlight my business on the county's website. Well, I'm pretty sure the prosecutor's going to tell me that's a conflict of interest without any question whatsoever. But I guess my problem is, where did this contract come from? Who authorized the contract? How much are we paying for it? And, first, and even more importantly, why would the county be in the business of promoting single individual businesses on the county's website?
So I know a little bit about this. There's actually no cost to the county. It's a program, I believe, through NACO is where they're connected with, which is National Association of Counties. They come out and they do videos highlighting, some of ours are around the areas of, I believe, parks and recreation, economic development, and I'm going to pitch it over to Jean for more information.
She is hustling up here to talk.
Commissioner Wheelock, that was through the National Association of Counties. That started almost a year ago, and it came before the board, and we highlighted the economic development. It has Hagerty Insurance, it has Britton Banners, and MAC Update, several of our larger companies to highlight why you'd want to have your business in Grand Traverse County. It's free to the county, and CGI goes to all of the local businesses to see if they would like to have, there's a promo of businesses throughout. So if you go on the website, Grand Traverse County, there's a link to the website, and it shows the video, and around the video are sponsors of Grand Traverse County and this video. So your Sonny or Wheelock and Sons Welding could be advertised throughout, not throughout the video, but it has a position for other area businesses in Grand Traverse County.
Well,
But I wouldn't recommend it.
At least in
you
my
do
mind,
that.
I couldn't see any reason whatsoever that I would want to put myself in that position. But I knew nothing about the program, or at least if maybe something come along the way some time ago.
Well, we've
I tried to
highlighted
call
it
Jean, and she
in
was
most
on
of our
vacation.
monthly reports that we've identified. So we tried to keep the board aware, and it's been on our website for almost 6 months now.
I'm pretty sure that if we ask Chris, he'll give me the same answer Bob Cooney gave me on Saturday morning, that I needed to stay just as far away from this as I could. But I guess I did not recall anything about the project, and I can't imagine why this county board would want to promote individual businesses in this community on the county's website.
It's not promoting individual businesses, it's promoting that we are a place that we want to promote businesses and have businesses come here.
Yeah, but
So if you look at...
If you have individual businesses listed around this website, no matter how you cut it, it's not any different than when I pay advertising on a placemat at a restaurant or a handout at a football game. That's advertising specific businesses on the county's website, and I don't think we should be doing that.
Just as a clarification, it's actually hosted off-site. It's not on the actual county's website. We have a link to the videos, which then are hosted on a different site.
Okay. Anybody else?
Carol?
Yes.
I just wanted to let the public know, we do have a great website. It's grandtraverse.org, and if you look toward the bottom, you click on Meeting Calendar. It has all the meetings listed, and if you click on the meetings, some of them do have detail on where they are. And that CGI thing is at the bottom of that. I saw it.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. We have no closed session, right? And so we stand adjourned. Thank you.